Hey, thanks for joining us here at the Football Diary podcast. We're into the semi-final stage of the World Cup in Qatar, and it's sad to say that England are not going to be going any further. They're going home after a disappointing defeat to France, where I don't think they could have given much more, really, to win the game. 2-1 to France on the night. I don't think France could have been disappointed if the score was the opposite way round. It's that kind of game where it was a game of fine margins, and I think we've been saying, Myles, haven't we, for this whole tournament. I just hope Gareth Southgate doesn't go defensive, doesn't switch back to a back three. We feared he might do that against France, and he didn't. He gave us everything we asked for and more. So this result really is just all the more disappointing because of that, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it hurts, man. I'm not going to lie. I've not felt good today after that game because there's nothing to pinpoint, really. There's no particular players to blame. There are a couple of performances I wasn't too happy with, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But I think Southgate got everything right. I think if you're moaning about Southgate after this game, it's because of ideas you had before the tournament, not because of this tournament. I think he was perfect. I'm hurt, man. It really is really difficult because they were the better side by some distance, I thought. And like you say, fine margins was all it took. And a couple of things if they'd swung in England's favour. And we're talking about England not only in a semi-final, but the favourites to win the whole tournament. And instead they've gone home and it just doesn't feel justified.
It feels like a missed opportunity, doesn't it, for this team? Because I think you look at the path, and I know the teams that we're going to talk about in another pod, such as Morocco, which would have been the next game. You can't really see England losing that, although it would be a very difficult game, and it will be for France as well. But it opened up to be a tournament where England were very far and away the favourites. The next one's probably Argentina after that, who don't look great at all, really. They're kind of being driven by one man. So, disappointing, and so many kind of ways we could unpackage this result, really. From the refereeing, from the decisions that went against us, from the penalty miss. But let's just start with England's positives so far.
Yeah.
He went with a 4-3-3, and we hoped he would. It was an unchanged team completely. Again, encouraging, but a few players we might have switched out. What would you have changed about the starting lineup? Because the formation we can't argue with, but what would you have changed in hindsight?
Not much, to be honest. I saw the starting 11 and I wasn't upset by it. I wouldn't have had Henderson in there, and I think he was head and shoulders the worst England player on the pitch because his pass completion rate was just so low. He did that standard Jordan Henderson thing of pressing, but pressing on his own rather than being part of the system. So it's just so easy to play around him. And once he's done that, he's stepped out of the midfield and left holes. But that's me being very critical. I probably wouldn't have changed much else. I think it was spot on. I think everyone can leave that game with their head held high, really. I do think Henderson was the weaker link, but I always think that. I think Luke Shaw had a particularly poor first half, but was excellent in the second half. Kyle Walker was outstanding. I think he kept Mbappe incredibly quiet, and that was obviously all the conversation going into the game. Declan Rice was world class. I thought he was so good. It's such a shame that he didn't take the ball off Mbappe for France's first goal when he put that challenge in, because that would have just capped it off. Bellingham was great in the first half, was a bit more quiet in the second. But I don't think I would have changed anything, to be totally honest. I think Southgate got it spot on.
I think Dave was saying during the game that Saka wasn't having a good game, but I think he's one of them players.
I thought he played well.
I did, I think he probably was one of the best players. And he caused constant threat to the France defence. And I think that, again, is another frustrating thing for me, is the England team across the board performed well. Apart from probably Henderson, like you say, there's not many that were below a 7 out of 10. It was a great performance all round. France had some awful performances from some players, but unfortunately some incredible performances from a handful that made the difference, really. But the defence was terrible for France. I think they really struggled to contain Saka in particular. Upamecano, I'm surprised he was still on the pitch. He was horrendous. We said Jules Koundé was going to be a difficult proposition at right back, and he really struggled, didn't he? And I even thought Theo Hernandez had a poor game as well. He couldn't deal with, for example, the crosses coming in from Shaw. I mean, there was one in particular where he only just got ahead of Saka, didn't he, from making contact. And there was only really Varane that kind of stood up and was counted. And obviously Lloris as well, who made 6 saves during the game. They were kind of holding that France defence together. So frustrating. And I had this feeling all along that we couldn't let this go to extra time, first of all, which we didn't, but it went the other way. But also we had to watch just the threat that was provided by every one of this France forward line. But in particular for me, I think whenever Giroud got a ball in from a cross, I thought it was a danger.
Mm-hmm.
There was a spell of about 10 minutes before that Giroud goal where both England and France, I don't know if you noticed, went long all of a sudden.
Yeah.
They stopped playing out from the back, started hoofing it up front to the target men.
Mm-hmm.
Kane and Giroud were kind of really dealing with their backs to goal very well.
Yeah.
And Giroud in particular was getting crosses all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a few kind of moments where you thought to yourself, he's got to be careful here because he's going to do something special. And that cross for the second goal from France, from Griezmann, wasn't it? It was just world class. Like, how do you deal with that, you know? And that's you can't argue with that as a winning goal because it was just crafted so beautifully.
I think you can, just because I think
Really?
England... Well, purely because, not that there was anything wrong with that goal, but I think England could have had 2 more goals. So I just don't think it should have been the winning goal. No, you're right. Giroud, I thought, was France's most threatening player, but Griezmann was their best player by some distance. Again, what a tournament he's having. Playing in midfield, it's a completely new role for him, and he's stepped up and just carried that team forward. It was difficult because France, once they got the first goal, sat very deep. So all of a sudden, you're not going to find the space in behind the fullbacks that you were expecting to. We talked a lot before the game about how Theo Hernandez in particular likes to get forward so much that you should find space in on that right-hand side. But actually, they just sat back and they were content to let England try and come at them. It was dangerous as a tactic because I think England played around it very well. And considering what we've seen from England over the last few years, that's impressive. When Iceland did that, England couldn't break them down. But when France did it, they looked threatening still. So the idea of both teams going long, I think, just came from the fact that they weren't getting the space they expected to out wide. Mbappe didn't get the space he expected. Dembele in the first half did. And then in the second half, Shaw really stepped up. And that made a massive difference. So, yeah, I don't know. Tactically, it's a hard one to pick apart because there's nothing that says France should have won that game. No. There's no signs that they were the better side. The only thing that went in their favour was any refereeing decision that could. I hate to be that guy who just blames the referee, but he was awful. He was absolutely terrible. Saka was not protected at all. There were countless fouls on him that just weren't given. I mean, let's go through the game, right? The first goal that France score, there's no way that should ever stand. Upamecano fouls Saka 3 times in the build-up. And I don't think it's true, but the commentator said that VAR couldn't go back because it was too far back.
Apparently so.
It's the same phase of play. The ball was not left.
I think it was 25 seconds max, and I think that was 45 seconds between the alleged foul and the goal. So yeah, I've not checked that rule, but yeah, if that hadn't have happened and it was called as a free kick, there's no goal.
And I don't know why it would matter that it was 45 seconds before. It's the same phase of play. It's directly from France gaining possession from that foul that they move the ball up the pitch and score. So you have to go back and look at it. That was a joke. Then Upamecano brings Kane down. Now, I've seen so many angles of this that I'm still not 100% sure it was in the box. But I've seen one picture that I think makes it very, very clear that it was. And if that's the case, why has VAR not given it as a penalty? That was a joke. It was
not just that,
such a
Myles.
Foul.
It shouldn't have been missed at all.
No,
it should have been called as a foul,
clear.
And then it should have gone to VAR to decide whether it was a penalty or a free kick. And either way, that's a superb position to have a free kick as well. So there's something England could have done with it. But the referee was so blind at seeing such obvious things. Like even the Mason Mount foul for the penalty that was given. How did he miss that, first of all, and have to be called to the monitor?
Ridiculous. So you've already got the first France goal should never happen. England should have had a penalty. They eventually get a penalty, which he did spot. He didn't go to VAR for it. It was very blatant. But that was probably the first foul that he gave on Saka. And Saka was taken out by Upamecano. I lost count. Upamecano probably fouled Kane, Saka and Foden accumulatively enough times to get sent off. And I don't think he even got booked. He might have in the end. I can't remember. But it was ridiculous how blatant he was. And he looks like France's real weak link at the back, because he just cannot defend. But if he gets away with it from the referee, then it's not a problem, is it? It was so poor. And then obviously, like you say, the ball in for the second France goal is such high quality that things like that happen. And then we had our chance. And it's frustrating because even with that penalty miss, there's 7 minutes to go plus 8 minutes added on. Teo Hernandez should be sent off. There's
Yeah.
The referee knew he made a mistake there because he didn't even book him at first. It was only when the England players went over and said, "Okay, so why are you not sending him off?" He went,
Yeah, that's
"Oh,
mad.
no, it's not a red card. I'll give him a yellow." He didn't go over to him. He didn't give the penalty and then book him. He gave the penalty, the players complained, and he went, "Okay, I'll book him." Well, that's not the
Yeah.
rule. You've made that up on the spot. The whole point is you don't send players off for being last man anymore because it's double jeopardy unless there is no attempt to play the ball. Watch Hernandez. He had the opportunity to watch him on VAR, and he doesn't even look at the ball. He's looking straight at Mount. He's tried to go shoulder to shoulder with him, missed, and gone straight to his back. So if you do that, where's the attempt to play the ball? You've got none.
Not just that, but the force with which he was barged was huge. And I know it always looks worse in slow motion, but Mount went flying, and he didn't. It wasn't a shoulder barge, and I think they were trying to protest that it was a shoulder barge, therefore it's fair game. He barged him between the shoulders, I think, like in his back, to the point where it forced him forwards, and that's a foul in any part of the pitch, and it would have been given within a heartbeat. But for some reason, he thought, I don't know, maybe that's fair game for a split second. It's such awful refereeing. Like you say, you don't want to be that kind of fan. But I think other nations have looked at the game and gone, fair play, England. You've played really, really well. You've outplayed the world champions and deserve better than that. So I don't think we're alone this time. But you've touched on Kane's penalty as well. I'm going to have to go there, really. Do you know what? The moment he put it down, I did think to myself, the pressure on this guy right now is huge. And as fans, you feel the nerves, don't you? As the build-up begins, and the time between the penalty being awarded and being taken feels like forever. And Kane does his routine. He pulls his socks up, does the same intake of breath, gets in the same position. All I'm thinking is, man, this is to equalise with 5-6 minutes to go. Not only that, but it's to be the outright leading goal scorer for his country. That's pressure. I don't think I could have dealt with that. And I do feel at that point we saw the human Harry Kane come through, where that must have flashed through his mind. Not only that, but it's obviously his clubmate in goal who knows him pretty well. And he's already gone his usual tried and trusted way for the first penalty. So he's probably thinking, do I do the same? Do I probably need to hit it a bit harder? And he did. He blazed it over the bar. So all these factors, I think, played into it. And you've got to feel for him, haven't you? It was heartbreaking for him more than anyone.
Do you know what? When he stepped up for the first penalty, the people I was watching it with, you turn and you say, I've never been more confident of anything in my life that he will score it. Because it's Harry Kane, and that's what he does. The second one, I went, I've got a horrible feeling about this. And you're right, because the circumstances just weren't set up for him. And it is heartbreaking. Because, do you know what? Kane is, I think he's an amazing professional. I think he comes across incredibly well. He obviously had that time where it looked like he might leave Spurs, but other than that, has been pretty consistent and loyal at club level too. He really represents the country very well. I think he's a very good character in the media too. And to be England's all-time leading goal scorer says what a servant he has been. So it means so much to him. And he dealt with it well in the moment, to be fair. He didn't drop to his knees. There wasn't any crazy emotion. He knew there's still a job to be done here. And he cracked on. But, it's got to hurt. It absolutely had to hurt. And massive credit has to go out to the first person who ran straight over to him, arm round him, come on, let's keep going, was Jude Bellingham. 19-year-old Jude Bellingham, honestly, his stock couldn't be higher. For the kind of player he is, clearly the kind of lad he is as well. Amazing. It's heartbreaking. If Kane had scored that, it wouldn't have even meant we'd won. It would have been more pressure, because then you take it to extra time, and whether England had it in them to keep up that intensity for another 30 minutes, who knows? But
see, I think they would have done. I think momentum plays such an important part, and I think the penalty miss and the nature of it deflated everybody.
Yeah,
I suddenly felt, it's not meant to be right now.
Yeah.
You could feel it straight away. And I think the players had that collective sort of lull. Even when 8 minutes were added on, France played the clock down really well. It was just frustration. You could see that kicking in from some of the younger players. Bellingham was getting angry at every decision, rightly so.
Yeah, he was.
It just wasn't meant to be, So there's an element of we need to learn from this. And I think a few people have said if England had won the Euros on penalties, this game would have been a formality, because that mental strength you take from that kind of win to overcome that and be the champions kind of carries you through to situations like this. And France have been there. They weren't great, but they saw it through.
I don't know if I agree,
but couldn't see it over.
I don't know if I agree because I don't think it was our fault that we didn't see it over. I know that sounds so almost negligent in terms of any
Mm,
responsibility, but what more could England have done in this game, really? If Kane buries that penalty, it's a different story. If we are given the penalty in the first half, it's a different story. If the ref picks up on the foul for France's first goal,
yeah,
there's the fine margins in this game. Only one of them was really within England's control, and sadly, it
yeah,
was Harry Kane missing a penalty. And you put your mortgage on him scoring normally. He's so reliable from the start. I,
yeah.
the only argument you could have is should someone else have taken the penalty because he'd already taken one and it was against Lloris again, and maybe it would have been better for
Maybe.
some. But I don't know who I would have trusted.
To be honest, I think he's done that in one situation prior to this for Tottenham, where he's had two
Yeah,
penalties in a game. He scored the first and missed the
yeah.
second.
I
So
think it was
similar
Liverpool, wasn't it?
circumstances. Yeah. So is that element of pressure facing
It's
the goalkeeper
hard.
a second time? It's difficult, yeah. And I think you're right. Maybe we should have had a contingency for that happening. But it was such a game where you can't really have foreseen two, three, maybe even four penalties that could have been awarded for the same team. It was one of those nights, wasn't it? Really odd.
The good thing is, do you know what? You wanna go far in a tournament. How successful you are in a tournament is always measured by whether you bring the trophy home or not. But England have been the best team in this tournament. I truly believe that. I know
Yeah.
that seems like an odd thing to say when you've just gone out, but has anyone played better football than England in this tournament? I don't think
Not
so.
at all, no.
I
He's
think
done
France were
more.
really fortunate. They were just clinical. That's the only thing about France. They're always going to be very clinical. They took the chances they had.
Well, they created
It's
half chances, didn't they? I think
yeah,
Chouameni's goal was great, but again, Pickford sorted very
through it.
late.
Yeah, through
So
Bellingham's
again,
legs, wasn't it?
the smallest margins,
Yeah,
if he'd have seen that a split second sooner, his fingertips are going to get to it.
and
It's tough.
even Drew's header, like that cannoned off Maguire before it went in. Who again,
Yeah,
actually, Maguire had a great game.
yeah, he
Again,
did. Yeah,
Maguire had a really good tournament. I'm glad
yeah,
for him. I wonder whether that might do him some good. Whether we might see him in a United shirt a bit sooner than we expected. It's hard to see him
yeah,
displacing Varane or Martinez now, but he's clearly a capable centre back. He's clearly
yeah,
very capable. I wonder if a move might be on the cards in January, and we'll see Maguire
yeah.
being Maguire
I don't
because
know.
I
I
want
think
to
if
see
you
that.
take the captain's armband from Maguire at United, suddenly he's a different player. I think he can't deal with that kind of pressure. So
Oh,
it
yeah,
makes
that's
sense to
common,
give
isn't
it.
it?
Makes sense to give it to like Varane alongside him. I think he'd probably raise his
Mm.
game a lot more with Captain Varane next to him.
Bruno's got to
Um,
have it.
yeah, I think
Anyway,
so. But
that's a side point, I
again,
guess.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
But
there's not one England player that will go home now and go, I had a terrible tournament. There will be a couple that might be disappointed at their game time. Like we didn't see Trent, we didn't see Madison,
yeah, yeah.
we didn't see very much of Callum Wilson really. But
Didn't need to though. I mean,
no, they
Kane
were
again. We've
excellent.
not even mentioned how well Kane played in this game,
Yeah, he
and
was
that's
great.
another thing that's so disappointing. His hold up play is so good. His way he rolls defenders and sort of spots that weakness in them was great, and he could have had a couple of goals quite easily from open play if things had gone differently. So gutted for him as a man. I hope he bounces back because
Oh, he will.
we need Kane for the Euros in 2 years, and I think that's what England need to look at now. And I think on that note, let's talk about the future for England because it looks like we've regressed a little bit. We haven't, though, have we? This is the best tournament performance from England in my lifetime. I've not seen
Yeah.
them consistently play this well every single game and still get knocked out at the quarterfinal stage. So what are we aiming for now? And is Gareth Southgate part of it? Do you think he wants to be? Because his stock has changed as well, hasn't it? I think all the mentality before the tournament was about how the Nations League went and that terrible run we went on. This has kind of put that to bed now. That seems like a long time ago.
I wish it had. I don't know if it has because
Mm.
people love trying to moan about England. Like we've got such a negative mentality as a nation about the national team because of years of us being poor that all of a sudden a manager comes in who wasn't the first choice for the job. He took over after Allardyce, which sounds hilarious now. He
Yeah.
kind of intimated that he might not want it. He's now the most successful manager we've ever had, other than Alf Ramsey. But even then, he's won more
Mm.
knockout games for England than any other manager. He's got us to a semi-final of a World Cup, a final of the Euros, a final of the Nations League. We were within penalties of winning the Euros. We should still be in a World Cup now and have just been knocked out by the world champions, but having played incredibly well.
Yeah.
There's no one better for England than Gareth Southgate right now. All right, let's say you're not happy with Southgate. You think he's too pragmatic. You think he's not getting the best out of this generation. Who'd you get? Who's taking that job that's better than Southgate?
Somebody
No
not
one.
English though. I think it'd be Thomas Tuchel. I
He's
think
not
would
taking that
be.
job.
I think he is, I don't think,
No.
I think it's a once in a lifetime shot, and I think he knows that's a talented team of players. So I think he would be in consideration for it, definitely.
I disagree. I don't think any elite manager takes the England job right now
I don't
because
want him for it. I want an English
no,
manager now. I think that's made the mentality and the club feel of the squad what it is. I think the fact that Southgate's English and has been there with the England team
I
makes a
think
difference.
I think we're naive to. I think we overestimate the importance of international football for managers
Yeah, I
because
agree.
if you look at the elite coaches, they don't want an international job. How if you're Guardiola, how are you going to get your philosophy across when you see your players once every 3 months, maybe
Yeah,
once every 6 months, and also club managers will have a bigger impact on those players than you will be able to have. Look how angry Guardiola, for example, got at Nathan Redmond and how he was being coached at Southampton. Do you think he's going to be happy if he's England manager or Spain manager at the way
no,
that the
no.
Real Madrid manager wants to play their players? Of course he's not. Tuchel's the same. Tuchel's so meticulous. Like I can't see a world where he's happy to go. Yeah, I'll be in charge once every 3 months. Yeah, there is no one that takes that England job right now that is anywhere near as qualified or as good as Southgate. No
Does
one will be
Southgate
as
stay though?
successful. I hope so. I really, really hope so. I think
Hmm.
it would be ludicrous if the FA said no. If he
Yeah.
wants to step down and try his hand at club management, I'd be disappointed. I'd be really disappointed to see it, but I wouldn't blame him necessarily, and I would worry. I think there's no one who takes that job.
There's a
You think
couple. I
Tuchel? Let's
think.
take Tuchel out of the picture. Who else?
Well,
There's
you're
no
looking at
one.
trying to lure Eddie Howe from Newcastle.
Never
Whether he
happening.
take it, I don't know. The only other one I thought was probably Steve Cooper because he won the under-17 World Cup, didn't he, with England, with this crop of players, with Foden and the likes of those kind of players. So maybe him, but he's not. It's not.
That's a
It's
downgrade.
nowhere near an elite level coach.
No.
However, when Southgate came, he was an under-21 coach, so we kind of
Yeah.
sneered at him. So there's a pathway
Mm.
there, I think, now. And it's the same for Germany in some ways. They had Joachim Löw, and now they've got, obviously, Hansi Flick, although he's not done amazing. But there's
No.
kind of a continuity there through the levels, and maybe that's what
Spain have
England
just
goes
done the
through now.
same. Yeah, Spain have just done the same, haven't they? They just brought in their under
Yeah.
21 coach.
And I think that's because they recognise you can't employ a manager for this kind of role like you would a club. It's not like a club at all. It needs to be somebody who understands the culture of the country
Yeah.
and has seen the players develop to an extent. So
And Southgate
limits the pool a bit.
Southgate has done that immensely well. Southgate has
Yeah.
brought back the excellent atmosphere within the camp for an England team, which has not existed in my lifetime. Players very openly talk about they didn't like England duty, or when they got there, they liked being with certain people that were basically their club mates.
Yeah,
That
true.
doesn't exist anymore at all. Like the Man United and Man City players are together all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what you want, really, at international level.
Yeah, definitely.
That's something Southgate has brought. He's also made England fans fall in love with England again. How many years were we disappointed? And under, I don't want to slate him because I like him, but Roy Hodgson, nowhere near good enough. We had Allardyce in charge for a game. That was a joke. Like
So
what?
odd.
McLaren, England fans, people didn't care about the national team.
No.
We love the national team now. Southgate did that. You can talk about him being pragmatic or playing boring football. Look at the success he has brought relative to this country over the last 3 tournaments now.
Yeah.
If someone had said to you before Southgate got there, would you take a semi-final at your first World Cup, the final of the Euros, you're going to lose on penalty, quarterfinals, you get knocked out to France the next one, I'd have bitten your hand off to see that kind of football.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, in the process, by the way, you're going to put 7 past Panama or 6 past Panama, or whatever it was. You're going to do the same against Iran. You're going to beat Germany. You're going to win
Wales
on penalties against Colombia. You'll beat Wales again. Amazing. It's been wonderful. If this is the end of Southgate, I will have nothing but praise for him and thanks for him. If it's the end of Southgate, I'm gutted. I don't think it should happen.
Anyway, the future for England looks bright, I think. It doesn't feel like it's all doom and gloom. And normally after a tournament exit, especially at the quarterfinal stage, which we do more than any other nation, it doesn't feel like we deserve to go at this stage. And I think we can go away from this feeling positive. And that crop of players is such a likeable bunch, isn't it? I'm even finding myself rooting for the likes of Kyle Walker. He's a Man City player through and through at the minute, but I'd rather have him on my team. And I think in the national team, you want him in your back four. And it's the same with Henderson to an extent. I kind of respect the qualities he brings. Yeah, for Liverpool, I can't stand the man, like everything about him. But, that's what England does. And I think that's not what it was like in the past. So you're 100% right. It's the right mood. It's the right time for Southgate to stay and to take us to that next level that he's trying to get to. But
the only other question for the future is who's not in this squad anymore? Who's going to leave now? Will we see Henderson again? Will we see Trippier or Walker again? 2 years to the Euros. So I don't know. What gaps are we going to find in this squad in 2 years' time?
Yeah, 2 years is a long time for some of these players. Too long, I think. I don't think we'll see Henderson.
Well, it's 18 months, actually, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah. It'll be phased out, kind of, the first few games that come after this, the squad will be very similar. And I think as it becomes a year down the line and these players are turning 33, 34, which they will, then they've got to be at the top of their game still to still get a squad place and to merit it, because we've got a lot of strength and depth in those positions now.
One player that I'm going to be honest, I hope we don't see in the squad again. If everything that's been coming out is true, Ben White can't be part of this England picture ever again.
No.
If he's coming in and clashing with Steve Holland in a camp that is building a wonderful atmosphere, why are you there? Don't turn up again. I'd rather not see that. It's annoying because Ben White's very, very good. And actually, come the next tournament, he probably should be starting for England. There was an argument to start him in this one. But if that's the attitude he's bringing to a camp that is otherwise perfectly united, I don't want to see that.
No, it wouldn't be welcome, I don't think. It's Tomori time, I think.
We'll see if he can kick on a bit at AC Milan first. And we'll have Tammy Abraham back in England because he'll be playing for Villa in January. So maybe he can get back. Well, there's big talk that he's going to move in January. Arsenal and Villa are both sniffing around, apparently.
Yeah, there's a lot of players on the fringes that are still young, but there's also a lot of players in that squad still very young. Bellingham included, Maddison's still very young. So, yeah, it looks bright considering how disappointed we feel now. It's not the end of the road for England and this group of players, and it's only the beginning, hopefully, of us kicking on and winning a major trophy very soon.
I hope so.
But if you want to check out our views of the rest of the quarterfinal ties, please do. This is just an England one, but I'll put the link on the screen now where you can find those, where we discuss the stunning Morocco victory amongst all the others that happened as well. But until then, thank you for your time, Myles, and we'll speak soon, mate.
Cheers.